Masachet Menahot Daf Ayin Amud Aleph, 14 lines down. Ba'ay Rabbi Abau, she borrowed regarding grain attached to the stalk. Shemara Habikri, you smoothed it in the pile after harvesting it, Ushtalaha, then you replanted it. Vikra Aleh Shem Mehubar, then you called it to be Truma while still attached. Ma was Is that considered Truma or not? Kim the Marahat Havla, we say something smoothed it out, it became in the Tevel. Therefore, it was Chayav in Truma before you replanted it. Kikra Hashem Kuchala. Therefore, he made it kadosh when he was able to. Well, no, maybe Kevin and Shisla, once you planted it, now it removes the status of Tiruma. Gemara says, Amar Allah Rabbanan Rabbeim, can that's the case. Masin Tiruma b'Muhabbal Kaka. We see a case that Tiruma could be attached to the ground. The Tanah Mishnah says, Lo Masin Tiruma b'Muhabbal Kaka, but they can't be such a case. Gemara says, that's not a problem. Amar Allah Kitina, when we say that, Lina Hoveb Mita. That's regarding to someone's Hayab Mita for eating Tiruma on purpose, V'chomesh, or doing a penalty of additional 20%. Mishnah is teaching you that a person cannot be chayav if he ate truma while it's attached to the ground. The eat halish v'achil, because if you first pick it and eat it, the talish is detached. V'gahim v'achil, if he eats it while it's attached, also not a problem. But la da'atu as kodam, it's not how people usually eat, and therefore you're not considered chayav. So my Mishnah meditif a pin kasat ilfa. What's the difference between this and what Ilfa wrote down? By saying that eggs that came from an unslaughtered bird that was not a kosher bird that was not slaughtered correctly. Mixed them out with those. Some of the bird was done by freeing some eggs are still inside. What did he write? Between those are the inside. Mitamin begadim abet b'li'ah. It's like a nevela bird that died. That if a person eats it, his clothing becomes a min. The eggs that are outside. Mitamin begadim abet b'li'ah. It's not considered tuma. So what do we see regarding the eggs that are still inside the bird are considered like the bird itself. So it's over here. If you're eating a grain attached to the ground, it can still be considered eating. And therefore, what's the question? The Gemara says, Talush, if it's detached from the ground, Avidi, inchi da'achli hachi, will eat it. It's detached, people don't usually eat that way. That's why it's not considered a hayav eating turma versus eating a bird eggs inside. That's what people usually eat. Someone plants kilayim in a plant that has no hole. Asur, it's asur. All right, so a flower pot without a hole, and you're putting it into uh, yeah, you're putting in a kilayim. You're telling me that a person gets malkut for going against hachamim. He gets going against hachamim. Asur will be asur. My commercial مستحيل تشوف يعني من غير that this is considered planting. Tanina, but we know that already. Shana says, "Taram mish'ena nakov ala nakov." Someone took teruma, separated teruma from something that grew in a non-hole pot, meaning a pot that's not connected to the ground, versus a pot that does have a hole. Teruma counts. Yeah, so you have to take teruma again to do the raita. So you see, it counts as the drabanan. So we see from here that that can't be the reason why if you've been saying that therefore he must be telling us that someone who plants climb in a non-hold pot is hayab malkut for rebelling against hachamim. Okay. حاخيتين wheat והשעורים barley והכוסמין הם spelt והשיפול שועל oats והשיפון and rye. הרי אלו חייבים מחלה יחייב חלה ומשרפים זה עם זה you can also combine for the minimum amount for חייב חלה והאסורים בחדש מלפני הפסח מלפני העומר. They're asur for hadash before you bring the omer. ומלקצור לפני הפסח and you can't harvest it before Pesach. אם משישו קודם העומר if any of these had took roots grew roots before Amr. However, the Amr makes them mutar. Beim Lab, there's no roots. As soon as she have Amr, he's wait for the next year. Then I write says, Kusmin Shmin Hitim spells like sweet wheat. She builds two av before the Saurim. Oats and rye are like barley. Kusmin regarding spelled, Gulba is considered Gulba. She pon Dushra. She pon is rye, which is Dushra or Dishra. She built Shual, she built Ta'ala, and she built Shual also called Shual Ta'ala. Okay, honey now, so like only these five grains, Achyav and Chala. Or is Vidoch and no, but not rice and something called millet. مثلا من هاي knows مرة كيش says حتى لحم لحم من مصاب يبزر شراب من ورد مصاب كتيب أخوي تبع حلا بيعبع أخو خم من لحم من الأرز وتبعتهم regarding مصاب لحم عوني. So we see that's what makes you have in matzah, also have in halal. The Gemara says, "Yatam gufa hayno matzah." That's the requirement. Behind hayno, that's considered good. Mar shakish v'chein tana der Yisrael, v'chein tana der Elazar ben Yaakov. Amar Kira, the pasuk says, "Lo tocha alav hametz shivatim tochalu alav matzot lechem oni." Devarim ba'im l'dei himut, only thing has to become chametz. I don't even say that any day, that's what a person can use for matzah. That's why it excludes these rice and millet. To anybody that himut, since they can become chametz, and sirhon only will spoil with long term if you leave it. That's our proof that chayav hadash. Chayav chala. ومزامين زي you could combine it. However, it says هتفوقها بحاجة بزيكوت. Grain, flour, and dough, kernels and flour and dough مستفيد زي also combined. ما يختبس الحدوش. لما كان هذا إن 11 وقارن 11 if you eat a كزايد of that amount combined يحيى ملكوت. الرسم says no إن حمس بسخ هذا خمس يحيى من بسخ. Papa says that in Maaser Sheni, we're able to bring from Maaser Sheni. There was Maaser that you have to bring every third and fifth year to Yerushalayim. The Achila Hutza Hamav eat this combination of grain, flour, and dough outside of a kazayit worth outside of Maaser Sheni outside Yerushalayim. Look here, you got Malkut. Papa read the explanation. The non Tuma Dochlin, how much you can combine Behayav and Tuma food. How come Shamos Tahidush? The Tvuah Ukmahin Dunyat Bezekot. Grain and flour is like dough. Math is like over there. Ukhlad b'inay is technically like food. How can I do ukhlad b'inay is also considered as food? That excludes something that was not you didn't take off the shell of the grain. But anyway, it says hita. It's a proof. Usually b'hatana means a question. Here means proof. Rashi says b'nihuta. Okay. Hita regarding wheat kernels. Ben kilufa b'shen kilufa. Whether or not it was peeled, mistaref if you combine with other foods to make it hayav and tuma. So whatever regarding barley, kilufa if it's peeled, mistarefet it's combined. Shena kilufa if it's not peeled, and mistarefet it's not combined. They don't count towards the kizait. Any that's true. But I'm Reish Mael. Alcohol zera zerua hasher yizara. Kedera shebnei adam meotzin zera just like people take them out for planting. That way, hayta beklipata, which means wheat when it's in its shell. Us'ora beklipata and barley in its shell. Va'adashim beklipata and lentils in their shells. So seemingly that the barley kernels are able to get out even with the shell. The Gemara says that lakash sira. Habilahot when it's moist, they protect it, and therefore it's considered part of it, and therefore we have it to If it's dried out shells, doesn't protect it, it just falls apart, therefore it's not connected, and therefore it doesn't combine. Okay, next part of the Mishnah said Ba'asurin b'hadash milfina Omer. It's asur for hadash before the Omer. Mina bin Haynas from the Gemara. She says Ati alechem lachem mimasai gzera shva from the word bread for matzah. Bezor l'fnei Omer Pesach also harvested before Pesach. Mina bin Haynas from Amar Shaychala min Reshit gzera shva the word Reshit Ati Reshit Chala gzera shva the word Reshit from Chala. Ma kodem before the Omer. What part? Rabbi Yonar kodem k'sis Omer until before you harvest the Omer. Okay. Once you bring the korban Omer. Then Mishnah says, "Asurim b'hadash lefnei Pesach." Haomer, they're asur to bring, they're asur for hadash, but to be eaten before the Omer. If it's like lefnei Pesach, or to be harvested before Pesach. Based on the mark, kodem havad Omer. Makes sense. Kodem says they have to bring it, but Omer. I know to look out of the huvot. That's why they didn't mention in one long pasuk, in one long sentence, meaning. The harvesting the hadash and eating the hadash do not take place at the same time. Otherwise, would have said that in one long sentence. And Lamanda Mar couldn't have said Omer, but couldn't have that before the harvesting it, that it means the same thing. It's eating it, then you should have mixed the same sentence. That what the thing is saying as vowels. You can't. They're asur and as hadash to be harvested or eaten before Pesach. Why are you separated otherwise? It doesn't make sense. Okay. Gemara says, it refers to the following. In the second part, if they took root before the Omer, then the Omer makes it mutar to be eaten. Michael knows me before, bringing it. There's the Mar, he says, harvesting it. Mother Belzar says, the Roshi had the according to Roshi of his generation, Yani the younger one. Firstly, the Hamadin don't sit down till you explain to me the following Mishnah. I know that Omer allows new grain that has roots without any grain. What do you mean from? Ripe. Lavavi sounds like also non-ripe. Okay, the says lavavi. Maybe when it says not ripe, maybe it grew to at least a third. Meaning more than just rooting, but even growing a third. Pasuk of when you start cutting. Sounds like things that are not able to be cut, which is roots without having a third. Maybe even maybe it's something that's like used as like animal food, which grows even in animal mouth. Kama standing grain. Love kama sounds like also non-standing grain, just roots. The Gemara says, standing grain, ulam agam, even bendable. just taking roots. Sounds like the Omer would be making mutar. The Omer said, "Amar va asher tizra, you shall plant. Mish azriya from the kind of planting. Amar the Baba, va ya akhi zakat afal kad l'tashish nami." If you just planted it, then even without roots, the Omer says, "Amar le sudene, you Torah hacham basadekti means in the field, which means to be part of the field, which means taking root as well." Let's take this to the Mishnah. Kosrim b'tach shelachin shemamakim. We may harvest the fields of valleys before harvesting the Omer. Avala gochim, but you should not stack it, because that might, we'll see why. Anshe Yericho, people of Yericho, Kosrim b'ratzon Hamim, they would harvest it like Hachamim allowed. The gochin shlopas Hamim, they would stack it against Hachamim's wishes. V'lo mihav yadam, Hachamim did not stop them. Koter the shahat ma'achil ma, you can harvest unripe grain for the animal feed. Marvida, every time that apply. Bizman shematchil ad shelo v'shlish, when it started harvesting before it grew a third. Which one remembers? He says you can harvest it as long as unripe before the Amr and feed it to the animal, even if it grew a third. Because you can harvest new grain because of the saplings, because it's not fit for the Omer. Also, people need the space for Avelut. If they have people to sit down, they want to make space. Also, if you have to expand the field space for people to learn. Lo yaseh otam k'yichol, but in that case, don't tie bundles. Aval manihan tzvatim, because leave them untied. Mitzvah Omer lavo min hakamah. The Omer has to be coming from standing grain. Lo matzav, you can't find that yavim min ha'aranim. You could bring it from the cut stalks. Mitzvah lavo min halach, also should come from good, moist and good freshness. Lo matzav, if you can't find that yavish avish, you can bring drier ones. Mitzvah l'ktabalad, you're supposed to cut it on the night of the 16th of Nisan. Nitzvah yom, if you did it during the day, kasher is kasher. V'do hayel Shabbat, and also allowed to do it on Shabbat. Brochana, men.